Today, we're taking a deep dive into the mind of Peter van Inwagen, one of the most important philosophers alive today. He's a thinker who takes a hard look at things we assume are simple and shows us just how mysterious they really are. He basically turns our common sense view of the world completely on its head.
So let's just jump right in with a question. Think about the chair you're sitting on, or maybe the desk your laptop's on. It feels real, right? It's solid. You'd bet your life it exists. But what if I told you that from a serious philosophical standpoint, that's actually really debatable? Yep, you heard that right. After thinking about it really hard, Peter van Inwagen comes to the absolutely mind-blowing conclusion that your chair probably doesn't exist. Not as a single thing anyway. And to get why he'd say that, we have to tackle our first big mystery. Okay, so why on earth would a brilliant philosopher say that chairs aren't real? I promise, it's not just for shock value. It all comes from asking a very specific, and it turns out, an incredibly tricky question.
And this is it. It's called the special composition question. It sounds almost childishly simple. When do a bunch of little things become one big thing? At what exact moment do a bunch of atoms or bits of wood and some screws stop being just a collection of parts and start being one thing we call a chair?
And this is where it gets really cool. Van Inwagen just walks through all the obvious answers and shows why they totally fall apart. Do parts make a whole when they touch? Well, no. When two people shake hands, they don't suddenly become a new, single-person object. Okay, what if they're fastened together? Imagine their hands get stuck. Still two people, right? What if you superglue them? A very sticky, very painful problem, but still two people. He even uses this wild sci-fi example. What if surgeons could fuse the wrists of twins together so perfectly that you couldn't even see the seam? Even then, we'd all say, that's two twins, not that's one new twin thing. None of our simple rules actually work.
So, if the simple answers fail, philosophers go to extremes. On one side, you've got nihilism. It says no objects with parts exist at all, only the tiniest fundamental particles, or simples. Van Inwagen says, no way, for one very good reason. You and I exist, and we're definitely made of parts. On the other extreme, you have universalism, which says any old group of things automatically makes a new object. So get this, your right sock, the Statue of Liberty, and the planet Mars all combine to form one gigantic scattered object. He rejects that too, because it just gets way too weird. So after shooting down all these other ideas, Van Inwagen presents his own pretty radical solution. He says the only time a bunch of parts truly come together to form one single new object is when their activities create a life. Think about it. A life is this incredible, self-organizing process where all the parts are working together for one unified purpose, to keep the whole thing going.
Okay, so let's just spell out the consequences here, because they're huge.
According to Van Inwagen, the only real composite objects are living things. So you exist, your dog exists, that plant in the corner exists, but tables, chairs, cars, even mountains, they don't exist as single objects. They're just a massive collection of fundamental particles that happen to be arranged chair-wise or mountain-wise. There's no chair, there's just a cloud of simples acting in a certain way.
All right, so if the world of physical objects is that strange, what happens when we turn that same powerful logic inward, to our own minds? This brings us to mystery number 2. The whole idea of free will, something we all feel we have. And this is where Van Inwagen drops one of the most famous arguments in all of modern philosophy. It's called the consequence argument, and it feels like a steel trap. Let's walk through it. First, we all agree you can't change the past, right? What's done is done. Second, you can't change the laws of nature, like gravity. But if the universe is deterministic, meaning every event is caused by a prior event, then the state of the universe a million years ago plus the laws of nature completely determines everything that happens next, including every single thing you think and do. The conclusion is chilling. You have no actual power over what you do.
And it gets even worse, believe it or not. This sets up a perfect dilemma. If the universe is deterministic, well, we just saw we're not free. But what's the alternative? An indeterministic universe where some things happen randomly, maybe due to quantum wackiness. But if your choice is just the results of a random particle swerving in your brain, you're not in control of that either. It's just chance. So we seem to be stuck. We're not free if our actions are determined, and we're not free if they're random.
So what do you do when you're caught in a perfect philosophical trap like that? Well, Van Inwagen doesn't try to pull a rabbit out of a hat with some clever trick. He does something incredibly honest. He basically admits free will is a profound mystery that he can't solve. You might be thinking, wait, so he can't explain it, but he still believes in it. How does that work? Well, for him, it comes down to something that's just a non-negotiable fact of human life: moral responsibility. We praise people for good deeds and blame them for bad ones. He says that whole part of our existence is so fundamental that it would be meaningless without free will. So we must have it, even if we can't figure out for the life of us how it works.
Okay, we have questioned the existence of our chairs, we have questioned our own freedom to choose. So for our third and final mystery, we're going big. We are tackling the ultimate questions. Why is there anything at all? And what, if anything, can we say about God?
I mean, this is the question, isn't it? Not just why are things the way they are, but why is there a world at all? Why isn't there just nothing? A complete and total void. No time, no space, no anything. It's almost impossible to even wrap your head around.
Van Inwagen explores a couple of ways to approach this. The classic theological answer is that a necessary being exists, a being, like God, that has to exist by its very nature. If that's the case, then nothing was never an option. But there's another fascinating idea from probability. Think of it as a cosmic lottery. There's only one possible state of absolute nothing, but there are maybe an infinite number of ways for something to exist. A universe like ours, a universe with different laws, a universe made of spaghetti. You get the idea. So the odds of nothing being the case are basically zero compared to the infinite possibilities for something.
Now, when it comes to specific arguments for God, Van Inwagen is a tough critic, even when it might support his own beliefs. And he had some, let's just say, very strong words for a common objection to one of the most popular arguments for God's existence. This is the fine-tuning argument. The basic idea is that the physical constants of our universe, like the strength of gravity, are set to unbelievably precise values. If they were just a tiny bit different, life as we know it couldn't exist. The theistic explanation? An intelligent designer set the dials just right. But there's a competing, non-theistic explanation: the multiverse. If there are trillions of universes, all with random settings, it's not surprising that we just happen to be in one of the lucky ones that can support life. And this is where you really see Van Inwagen's intellectual honesty. Even though he is a theist, he looks at the multiverse idea and says, you know what? That's an equally good explanation. And because a plausible alternative exists, he concludes that the fine-tuning argument just doesn't work as a solid proof for God. It's interesting, for sure, but it's not a slam dunk.
So let's take a step back here. We're left with some huge, unanswered questions. The mystery of ordinary objects, the mystery of free will, the mystery of why we're here at all. If philosophy just leads us into one mystery after another without giving us clean answers, then what's the point of it all?
Van Inwagen's answer to that is maybe the most surprising thing we've talked about yet. He basically says that the job of a metaphysician isn't what we think it is. It's not about trying to come up with these grand scientific-styled explanations for everything.
See, unlike science, philosophy doesn't really stack up a big pile of settled facts. For pretty much every big question, there are brilliant people who completely disagree. For Van Inwagen, the true value of philosophy isn't in finding the final answer. It's in sharpening the questions. It's about taking a simple belief you've had your whole life, like my chair exists, and revealing just how incredibly deep and complicated the issue really is. And that really is what he leaves us with. He shows us that reality is so much weirder, so much more mysterious than we could ever imagine. He's not giving us a map to get out of the maze. He's just showing us how vast and deep the maze is. So the question he leaves us to ponder is this: if we're not going to get a neat answer at the end, what is the real value we get from just daring to ask these questions in the first place?